Something for your kids?
Yeah, I was gluing.
Oh, I was gonna say gluing something. I should have
Did
said
you know? Could
gluing
you
or
have some-
cutting.
Did you have glue?
No, or
everywhere?
you were cutting something.
I was gluing rhinestones on a hairpiece.
Why?
Aubrey has her first dance competition this weekend. So you have to make the stuff. I didn't. Or you have to stone. It's called stoning, which I didn't know, but you do.
I
So
thought it was called.
whole-
I thought it was called bedazzling.
It is bedazzling, but I think
Stoning.
it's stoning if you're.
Stoning. If you're classy, it's stoning.
Well, I think people
Otherwise,
were
it's
stoning
bedazzling.
before bedazzling was even popular.
Okay.
But yeah, it takes a long time.
So I mean, I got stoned last night.
I was stoning it up.
Yeah, just kidding.
We're the very opposite because Audrey had to do some like historical figure thing today, and I was like, "Tell me who this is again." And this was a couple days ago. She comes home Monday. It's like, "Oh yeah, hey, on Thursday I'm supposed to be dressed up as a historical figure," and it came down to it's like, "This is a scientist." Great. So I ordered a child's lab coat on Amazon
Yeah.
for $13. It got here last night. Got home from church last night. It was on the porch.
Oh, nice.
That's how I
So,
usually am.
Tore it open and I unpacked it. I was like, Audrey, here is your.
What if it
lab
was like a
coat."
scientist in like the 13th century?
I have
You're
no
like,
idea.
this looks
Really?
perfect.
Yeah, I don't know.
Put some goggles
Did
on.
she get to pick, or did they pick for her?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm like, wait, who
this
is
week
it?
is
No, I wanna
chaos
know.
right now.
Yeah.
Our lives are chaos right now.
Yeah.
So like we're just trying to survive.
Everybody's because it's at school. You got all the last everything before the holidays
Yeah.
start. So
We have 3 different band concerts in the span of 8 days because we have 3 kids in 3 different bands at school. Yeah, high school band, junior high advanced band, junior high beginner band. So no, they're all different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't it be cool if y'all all did
Did
one
it say
thing
that's
together?
what I well see I was just thinking in my head all my kids do different stuff and I'm like I always think it'd be better if they did the same thing but not helpful. Still
Not-
different
yeah,
ages
still-
I guess.
well-
Only
You know?
helpful if they do the same thing at the same time.
At the same
Yeah.
level.
So either
At the
one of
same- at the
you's
same
playing
level.
up or one of you's playing down.
That's right.
After this
Sorry.
year, it matches up because Luke and Audrey will be in the same band.
Yeah.
And then the year after that, Luke and Spencer are in the same band. And so then we're down to 2.
2.
Yeah.
Just one. That's like those people who live around here who have like one kid at this elementary school, one kid over at this like junior high on the other side
Yeah,
of
like
town.
Wave or something
That's
like
you,
that.
right?
Yeah, and then one kid at
Well,
this
mine are
high
at different
school that
schools. I've had
doesn't
3.
drive.
I'm at 2 schools. I'm only at 2. This is I think my last time to only have 2 schools until Micah graduates.
Nice.
Well,
Oh, that's not nice.
That's
No,
not
that's
nice,
bad.
yeah.
You're down. Okay, you're down to 2 schools. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. But you had at one point across town.
Yeah, we just had across town.
Yeah, and that's hard.
Yeah, but you know, you make it work. Carpool if you can. But you
Yeah.
know. Anyway,
Carpool's life-giving.
carpools. All right, are you guys ready for today?
Yeah.
Think
This
so.
one?
This is my favorite book.
Hey, and we said at the start of the last one, we have another Bible reading plan
Yep.
set up for next year.
So we when we talked about that, I don't think we gave people context. Like when will they be able to have access to that, or do we not know that yet? And so we may not.
Yeah,
be
so
able to-
we ordered the bookmarks this week. Well, I say this week. We're recording well in advance.
Yeah.
So I think our plan, you and I talked about, is to hand bookmarks out maybe at the Christmas Eve
Yeah,
services.
hopefully.
But we'll
Yep.
begin talking about that. We have thousands of bookmarks coming, and the plan starts on January 1st
Yeah.
with Genesis 1.
and the podcast
In the
is still TBD.
I don't know, Ted, you tell us.
Yeah. People are emailing Ted and telling him whether or not he should do
He
a
should do-
podcast
yeah.
again.
Not he. We.
Listen, I told you guys this, but my grandma asked about you
Oh, that's
over
funny.
Thanksgiving.
I can't believe that.
I know.
That's the sweetest
Yeah,
thing ever.
I didn't even know she was listening, watching.
That's awesome.
And she has
What's
been.
her name?
Peggy.
Peggy. Hi,
Yeah.
Tell the
Peggy.
truth. She loves Ted.
She does. She was like, "Tell me about tell me about Ted."
It's like
And-
you
and
just say
the-
he's normal and everything.
the day that she asked me, it was like it caught me off guard because I didn't know. I mean, we're in Virginia. I didn't know she's listening to this. But that morning, I'd seen Rachel at the airport.
Mm-hmm.
We bumped our families. Like
Oh, sure. Another thing without me.
I thought that when I,
I was
saw
actually with his grandma.
no. When we were going through security, the 5 of us at Hobby Airport, I look over and there's
Yeah.
Rachel and her mom, and I'm like,
Like
"What are you
five,
doing
like 5
here?"
in the morning.
Yeah.
Nice.
So we didn't plan that without you. Ted.
Like, don't tell Ted we saw each other. He'll feel so left out. Okay, let's hop in. John 6. we
John
left
6.
Can we do Psalm 104 first?
Okay. Yeah.
I know it comes at the end of the week, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
just
good.
happened. I read that first,
Okay.
and then I read John 6 through 10. And I
Yep.
wish
I
we.
get
I
so
w-
excited when you're excited.
I know. I'm sorry. I wish we had put.
104 was a
Psalm-
long one.
It is a long psalm, but I just wish when we made the reading plan that we would have put it first, because when you read Psalm 104 and then read John 6, you see Jesus is the God that's being celebrated in Psalm 104. It's fascinating.
So let's. I mean, I know we're obviously not going to read all.
Yeah,
of
so which part?
Psalm.
Where do you get that?
That's what I was
Okay.
going to say.
So it just starts at the very beginning, Psalm 104. Bless the Lord, O my soul. O Lord, my God, you're very great. You're clothed with splendor and majesty, covering yourself with light. This picture of the God of the universe and the God as the Old Testament authors knew him is just,
Make sure this is
sorry,
close
yeah,
enough. I want
close.
to make sure people
Okay.
hear you.
God the Father, the creator of all things, power, majesty, glory, all of that. That's how it starts. He set the earth on its foundations, creator, all that, right? Which we read in John 1. Jesus was the one
Yeah.
doing that. But then picking up like in verse 14, you cause the grass to grow
yeah.
for the livestock. So like you're feeding the animals. But the animals actually bring forth food from the earth, which makes wine gladden the heart of man, and oil to shine his face, and bread strengthens man's heart. And then goes on to like show how the trees have water, and the moon gives the seasons, and like basically get to verse 27. Everything in creation looks to you to give them their food in due season. And everything that exists comes from the Lord, from his hand. And so I just read that. Again, I love Psalm 104. I have for a long time. And I was like, oh, okay, good to read that. And then I flip to John, and I read John chapter 6. And so you can imagine what happens in my head. And I'm like, no way.
Yeah.
Jesus is the one
Yep.
who provides food for the people. And then he goes on to call himself the bread of life. So wait a minute. The God of the universe that stretched out the heavens and that provides food for everything in creation and just makes it all happen, that God was a man, Jesus, who then showed himself that he was that God by the signs that he performed and the I am statements that he made. Like, it was...
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I think one thing too
Just
when I
makes springs gush too. It's all in there.
Well, so that's one thing that stood out to me when I was reading this was, we've talked before on the podcast about how water, and this time was like it's like it's symbolized
The sea.
like the sea, and it's kind of like you get that in the beginning part here with the water, but then there's something different about springs. So I'm
Yeah,
thinking
yeah.
like
Living
difference
water.
between like ocean and then springs, because that's where it makes that turn in verse 10. And yeah, I don't know. It was just
Yeah.
that was a loud noise in here. I hope is everybody okay? Did you hear that?
I heard that, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe somebody dropped something.
Yeah. Hopefully everybody's okay. But anyway,
Yeah, the sea's chaos that he provides order over, that he controls, but then
there's
living
springs,
water.
living
That's
water.
spring. That's
Yeah.
what you can drink. That's what
Yeah.
gives you life.
Yep.
And that's what he provides.
And then that kind of sets up the whole illustration here,
right.
what it gets for. But and then especially reading from last week about with the woman at the well and the living waters. I mean, it's the same thing, just like the feeding of 5,000. It's the same
Yep.
kind of stuff. This is the God who
Jesus is that God.
Yeah.
You can start to see, these aren't random stories.
Yeah.
John's not doing something random. He's telling us something very specific.
Which then goes back for me. It's like I say this every time when Jesus comes back and is like telling all the disciples before Acts, like revealing himself and all. He's like, "Oh yeah, flip to the next page. Yep, boom, that's me too. Oh, right here. Oh, that's
Boom,
me
that's
too.
me. Yeah.
So that's probably disrespectful. I
don't
mean
think
to
it
be,
is.
but
No, that's
you know
exactly
I'm
what he was doing. I mean,
Yeah.
even his warning to the Pharisees, which is like the other end of that, he's saying, you search the scriptures, but like this, I'm here. I'm who gives you life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's me.
Yeah. Okay, so you just talked about it. Jesus, he feeds the 5,000. You know, we talked about this before too, and I don't want to keep saying that every time because these are all stories, right? But in 15, where he's like perceiving then that they were about to make him by force,
Make him king.
yeah, to make him king, he withdrew. I think that felt different too, just knowing all the king language and like being a king that like, no, he's not going to be a king of like the kings of the earth that were made by man or. He's a different kind of king. So, like, he knew that they were going to try and do that and be like, oh, no, just you wait.
It's not my time, and that's
yeah.
not the kind of king I am.
Yeah.
Both, yeah.
But he didn't have to say that because it's like, he's like, oh, no. They're not going to make me king. They don't get to do that.
Yeah, even in this story, so there's all these references to Genesis, which in the prologue, if you remember from last week, prologues would have like lays out the whole book. And in the prologue, there's references to Genesis, and then there's also these references to Exodus. And you see that here too. You'll see it with providing bread in the wilderness and then walking through the water or on the water. I mean, we're still supposed to be thinking, oh, this is the promised greater Moses. This is a new and better Exodus. That's all wrapped up in here too.
Yeah. Oh, because he leaves on the water and then it gets into the whole thing about the bread of life. And they're like, this is later on here in 6,
Providing
I guess. Yep.
the bread in the wilderness, is taking them through the Red Sea.
Yep. Do not work for the food that perishes, but for the food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you.
Yeah, it's not about, I mean, it is what God provides us, but it's much, much more than that, than what Jesus is actually offering.
And it's even an interesting thing right after that. This is then in verse 28. It's like, they're like, well, what must we do to be doing the works of God? And he said to them, dude, you just got to believe in him who he has sent. So you just got to believe in Jesus. You want to do the works of God? Start believing in Jesus.
Follow me.
Yep.
You mentioned in 6:15, he says, perceiving they're about to come and make him king. But then the next part of that verse is Jesus withdrew to the mountain by himself. And just anytime there's a reference to a mountain, it's a sacred space. It's where God's presence was. It's closer to heaven. So it's where heaven and earth are closer to meeting. So just that Jesus, in these moments, you'll see that he does that. He goes to be alone, and he goes to be with his Father in prayer and solitude. That was something that if I'm following Jesus, if to believe and have life is to do what Jesus did and follow him, that is a large part. It's not just his teaching. It's not just these miraculous signs. He always does that. He always goes and prays and has his Father's presence with him.
Yeah, I was going to say something. I'm just being silly here. Can I be silly for a second?
Yes.
Hold on. I feel like I'm making myself laugh more. It's probably stupid. No one cares.
No, I cannot wait.
But it's this idea of like pastors, like when they go on vacation, are they going to the mountains to be closer to God? Or are they going to the beach to be closer to like the bad place? So it's like, are you a beach pastor or a mountain pastor?
That's how you
Like, I hope my pastor's a mountain pastor. Anyway,
That's how you really know false
but
teachers.
yeah.
Where do they vacation?
Where they vacation.
Yeah. Where do you like to go on vacation? Where do you like to spend your time?
That is funny.
But anyway, such a judgment. Sorry.
I was thinking, I hate the beach. I do, but Danya loves
Because
it.
you're so righteous. No, I'm just kidding.
Danya loves the beach, and so I go to the beach reluctantly. I mean, happily.
Yeah.
Because she loves it. But gosh,
Yeah.
what does that say about her? I wonder.
No,
I'm kidding.
nothing. All right. Oh man, I had some more here. Okay, let's go on to 7. So the Feast of the Booths, I didn't remember reading about this. Maybe we did, and it wasn't labeled that way. But this is the only place where we get this account, one of the feasts, and so maybe help remind people that, like in the tradition, they had these
Holidays.
Holidays.
Yeah,
Okay.
basically holidays. But their holidays often lasted it was more than just like 4th of July where you have one night everybody eats hot
Yeah.
dogs and does fireworks. This would be a week-long thing. And each holiday, each feast is meant to remind them of something from their history. And so this was their time in the wilderness, the Feast of Booths.
And
It's whenever God was providing for them and leading them in a pillar of cloud
Yep.
and fire.
and we talked about this last podcast, but like all that is back in Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy,
Yeah.
but Numbers, especially in their time in the wilderness, is talking about all of that. And so they are many generations later trying to connect their own hearts to the story that God played out through his people back then.
And is this
His
time?
faithfulness.
And
Yeah.
this story in Exodus, is this also what they're celebrating, alluding to, like what in this chronologically about the bread and the manna? So
Yeah.
it's all kind of like
It's
still
all-
flowing together.
Yes, it's all supposed to take you back to that story, and this is the greater Exodus.
Yep. Okay.
Aren't you excited to read Exodus and Genesis in January?
I guess.
Oh, you should be.
I know. I'm trying to hedge.
It's
my,
going to be
like-
really fun because we're really going to be like, oh, yeah, okay. Like, we just read that over and over and over again in the New Testament.
I think
We're
I
gonna be
have a
looking
fear
forward
of
instead of
committing
looking
to
back.
things, as if I'm going to be honest. It's like the beginning of doing this one. I'm like, oh God, like, are we actually going to do this? And like,
Yeah.
keep reading. So the idea of like, are we going to do this again? It's like, I don't know. Are we going to like, should we actually do that?
But either way,
Like,
we're going to read it.
yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna read
Y'all
it.
are going to read it.
Yeah.
I'm saying the podcast. And just in general, committing to read that. I mean, I'm excited about it. This
Yeah.
was awesome.
It feels like a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Enough about the podcast on if we're going to do a podcast. We'll get back to
this podcast.
yeah. Get back to this one. Okay. I'm trying to think of what, because there's a little bit of a shift here, I guess.
Real quick, it's worth, because there's some of this happens like in chapter 7, like in 32, the officers that are sent to arrest Jesus. These are temple officers. So there's a distinction between the Jewish authorities and the Roman authorities. And some of that is always at play, and especially in the crucifixion later and his arrest. So he's arrested later by the temple officers. They accuse him and take him to Rome, though, because the Romans are the ones that have to kill him. And so, it can be confusing to know what's happening, but no, there's two authority groups at play.
And later on
That's
we know
helpful.
the one is trying to use the other.
That's
or
right.
all of them. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, even though he just says, you know me and you know not where I came from, but I've not come on my own accord. He who sent me is true, and him you do not know. I know him, for I come from him, and he sent me. I mean, he keeps saying over and over again that if you want to know who God is, look at me. If you want to know him, know me.
Yeah, he's definitely trying to still at this point, like, kind of, I don't want to say drop hints, but give people like, dude, like, I am who that was.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing whenever people say that Jesus never claimed divinity. I mean, when you're reading through any gospel, frankly,
Yeah.
but especially here in John, you're like, he really does over and over and over again.
Oh yeah.
That's why they wanted to kill him.
So there's this verse 34. I think this could be something that, like, maybe, I don't know how I want to say, like, people struggle with, or maybe have heard people talk about. It's kind of like, oh, well, what does that exactly mean? And so he's saying, you'll seek me and you will not find me. Where I am, you cannot come. And so is that maybe people have misinterpreted that to mean bad things? Is this an opportunity to clear up some theology about that? Or like, hey, he's not specifically referencing like, hey, he's going to some place that, he's going to heaven and nobody's going to be with him ever. Or maybe this is just for he's referencing a period of time where he will be somewhere where everyone won't be, but then they will. Maybe this isn't a good conversation to have, but
No, go for it.
I'm going to keep rambling till one of you interrupts me to start being like,
Well, I mean,
here's
he
what I
just
think.
said, right? You don't know where I came from. I came from he who has sent me. So he had just said that.
Yeah.
And then he says, I'm going to be with you for a little while, and then I'm going to return to him who sent me. And so, I mean, he's just telling them it's not for very long. I'm going to be here for a little while, and then I'm going to go back. I mean, he's really talking about his resurrection and ascension right here.
But here he's saying like, oh, but where I'm going, you guys can't come. And so is that like maybe just specifically like those people like, hey, you're not going to be allowed in?
No, I mean, I think he's saying, when I leave, I am ascending to heaven to sit at the Father's right hand. You're not coming there with me.
Yeah.
when I go. And you'll still be looking for me. You won't be able to find me.
Remember, there's all these crowds following him because they're looking for the Messiah, they're looking for the Christ, and then he's saying, "Hey, I'm here now, but I'm going to go back."
Yeah, like even before this, at the Feast of Booths, he didn't go at the beginning. He shows up later, and he's trying to keep a low profile because they are looking for him.
Yeah.
They're walking around saying, "Have you seen Jesus?" And again, we have to remember this is a different time. They don't have a mugshot of him they're passing around. Not everyone that's looking for him has ever even seen him and knows what he looks like.
Yeah,
And-
the man with the mattress didn't know who had saved him.
Yeah. So, he's being searched for, and that's what he's trying to say. Like, you will be looking for me, and you won't be able to find me.
Yeah.
And also alluding to his resurrection. Like, he knows you're going to put my body in a tomb, and it won't be there. And
Yeah.
you'll be looking for me, and you won't find me.
Yeah.
But I don't think it does mean, if anyone has that question, like, does that mean like, well, what if I am trying to find Jesus? I can't find him? That's not what he's talking
Correct.
about. He's talking about his physical presence with them right
Yep.
there.
Perfect. And then I think that just, it's an encouragement here in the Rivers of Living Water section, verses 38. Whoever believes in me, as the scriptures have said, out of his heart will flow rivers of living water. And so just this idea of like fruits of the Spirit, and just if we really believe in him, if we're a Christ follower, out of our heart should flow rivers of living water, things that bring life. And
Yeah, again, that's a reference back to Exodus. And the people were thirsty, and the Lord commands Moses to strike a rock with his staff.
Yeah,
and what comes
water.
out of it? Rivers of water.
Yeah.
For them to live on. And he's saying that you will be like that rock, that out of you the Lord will bring the water of life. And that's because the Spirit will come upon you.
Yep.
And so John he knows what Jesus was referencing, and he's also experienced the outpouring of the Spirit. I mean, he says, we hadn't received it yet because he
Yeah.
hadn't been glorified. He hadn't ascended to the right hand of the Father. But then we've all read Acts, and so we know what happens. They actually receive the Spirit, and what he promised comes to pass.
Yeah. I just think that would be like a crazy, it's at the end, it's like he was trying to be all incognito, but then he's like, wait a second, everybody, ting, 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 ting. Everybody turns. Hey, if anyone thirsts, let him come and drink, whoever believes in me. I mean, so.
Yeah,
Pretty
I think
cool.
that because they're like these little snippets of stories, and like at the end of the gospel, John will say he did so many more things. He said so many more. Like we can't even contain it in one letter. But if it does feel like random, like was Jesus just silent all day and then just stood up and yelled?
Yeah.
And I don't think that's necessarily how it went. Because he was a rabbi, he was a leader. He had to hide sometimes whenever they were trying to find him to kill him.
Yeah.
But he was still teaching.
But here he stood up and cried out. Okay. This one had another weird, like in my thing. I don't know if that's in everybody's thing. I tried to like look it up, like the whole, manuscripts didn't include this story, which I'm
yeah.
like, oh wait, is this the only? I thought we had read about this in other. So help maybe unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, so copies of the scriptures have been passed down, right?
Yep.
And they're in scroll form. And the oldest ones that we have don't include these verses, just like it says. The earliest manuscripts don't include 753 through 811. That's the story of the woman caught in adultery.
In John.
In John, right here.
Right here.
Yeah. And so, but there are manuscripts that exist that have this
Yeah.
story, which is why it's been included. It is believed to be faithful to what Jesus did, and the oldest accounts don't have it. So you have to remember, when any of the biblical authors write this, it has to be copied by hand. Each time they're editing, they're finding errors, they're adding to or rearranging the text. That's not a bad thing. It's actually beautiful because that's how we end up with what I showed you in the last podcast with the structure and the design and it takes work. You don't just sit down at first draft and that pops out. It takes work to create something like that with intentionality. I think we talked about that in the Matthew podcast. Like Matthew designed his book the way he did for a reason. There's literary structure there. So it doesn't,
Yeah.
I can understand if a person reads this and they become concerned, like, wait a minute, this is, my Bible doesn't, it's not the right thing. Like, lean into the humanity of the Bible and the humanity of its
The partnership.
authors. The partnership.
The participation in God's
yeah.
story.
Yeah.
But also, if
I probably
this-
just get more to like, well, if it wasn't in there in the early ones, who decided to put, like, why was it decided to add it to here?
Well,
And
I think
that
it's
feels
because
like,
by the time, like it started to be included all the time. Then
someone's
we
like, hey,
then we realized it necessarily wasn't in all of the earliest ones. But do you take it out? Well, it's really
Yeah, I see what
it
you're
is
saying.
faithful.
Yeah.
It doesn't contradict
Yeah,
any of his
yeah,
teachings, who
correct.
he is, and so we'll leave it in. But we'll have a note. In the earliest ones, it's not necessarily in there.
Yeah.
But it's nothing to be worried about. You can skip it
Yeah.
if it makes you uncomfortable. That's okay.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't change who Jesus is.
yeah,
Any of his teaching.
Well, and it's not that it's not included in other stories. It's not like this is the only place it says someone took some random story and we added in, right?
I can't remember that now.
I don't remember. Let me see.
That's what I say. Look that
Tech,
up.
you say that, I'm
I
like,
felt like we talked about it. I thought we talked about it.
It's not in Matthew. So it's cross-referencing here in my Bible. Matthew 5, which I know it's not there, and Luke 4, it's not there either. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it is.
Okay, so
I don't
maybe it
think-
is.
yeah.
All right. Man, so this is one of those like great stories that we've read about that
But really, it's the same message that he says over and over again, and it's really
Yeah.
it's about his compassion and kindness and forgiveness of this woman, but it's also about the hypocrisy of the religious leaders of
Yep.
the Israelites who are supposed to be displaying the character of God, but when you look at them, you don't see God. When you look at Jesus, you do see God, and it's just another example of that.
well, and I think there's something even like to me, it's like this is a miraculous event too, where at least the way it's written, he's writing with his finger and people heard. So it's like he's writing something and then people heard in their head and realized. So whatever happened there, like something miraculous may have happened.
Yeah, and I think
maybe
no one's
that's-
really
that's-
sure what he wrote
Yeah,
or
but-
what that means. Yeah.
But still, if it didn't say like he wrote something on the ground and they read it. He just wrote. It didn't say he spoke. He just wrote.
Yeah. But
So-
someone might have read it out loud.
Yeah.
I don't really know what that means. We don't really know what he wrote. But what we do know is he says, I don't condemn you, go
Yeah.
and sin no more. So it's the same message that he gives over and over again. You have forgiveness in me. I'm living water. I'm eternal life, which means go and sin no more and proclaim my name.
Yeah. All right. So not a miracle. Sorry, guys.
Well, we don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know.
Well, that's
Really,
what,
we
but
don't
that's
know.
what I'm saying. We
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, we don't.
So it could be just as it could be.
Yeah.
It's still in line with his character, right? He would-
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, he tells the parable about the
I like this. We're trying to make accommodations for my heresy.
no, but what we're saying is this matches the heart of Jesus.
Yeah.
The parable about the shepherd who leaves the 99 to go after the one. Even what he's already done in John,
With the woman at
speaking
the
to the
well.
woman at the well,
Yeah.
yeah. And now it's almost like this is the next step. Not only is he engaging with a woman that he shouldn't be if he's trying to remain clean and be a rabbi and all that, he's defending her, and he's saving her, and
I mean, he's defending her in the midst of a mob.
yeah,
Yeah.
And he's doing it by saying, which one of you is pure and innocent?
yep.
All right. I think we spent enough time on that.
Okay,
Let's keep going.
I'm the light of the world. We can't jump over that.
No. That's a pretty big theme.
It's another
Talks
I
about
am
it from the
statement.
thing. Yep.
Yep.
It's another allusion to Genesis.
How so?
He brings light where there's darkness,
Yep.
order from chaos. I mean, it's the beginning. He is light, he's goodness, he's everything. It's new creation.
And Exodus, where the people are led at night by a pillar of fire. That's the light at night. And I remember reading one commentator a long time ago that talked about when he's saying this, he's in the temple area and at night. So the temple had these two massive stone pillars with a bowl on top they would fill with oil and light on fire, so that from miles away at night you could see the temple, the two lights at the temple lit up in Jerusalem. And I mean, there's a chance he's standing in front of these lights and he's like, no,
And the
It's
light.
me.
I'm the light of the world.
Yeah.
It's hard for us to understand because we can just flip on lights everywhere. But light and darkness were much more real to them.
Oh yeah. If you've ever been somewhere where you didn't have like electricity and
Yeah. Light is
gets
good
dark.
and dark
It's
is
dark.
chaos
Yep.
and scary.
Yeah.
It really is exciting to think about starting in Genesis because we don't understand what it means to live in a world that's that dark, where you really need light like that and you're looking for light, where you're dependent on it and water, fresh water and bread in the wilderness, but we all sort of do.
Yeah.
You know, we can still understand what it means to be in a world that feels dark and where nothing satisfies us. And he still says, I'm the light and I am everything you need. I'm eternal life. Come to me. It's the same message.
a couple other things in here. Just curious to know your thoughts. And maybe it said it, and I didn't remember reading it in the cheat notes. But in verse 28, 8:28, where he says, "So Jesus said to them, when you have lifted up the Son of Man, then you will know that I am He." Lifting up the Son, is that the crucifixion? Like when they lift him up on the cross? It is? Oh, see.
And remember, he mentioned the serpent,
Lifting it, yeah.
lifting up the serpent on the rod, too. He's
Oh,
already
Just
mentioned
as,
that.
just as
It's the
Moses
same
lifted
thing.
up the serpent in the wilderness, when the Son of Man is
And he's like,
lifted
you
up.
are gonna,
Okay,
and
but
it's
that's
gonna
the
be
same thing. It's the crucifix when he's lifted
Yeah.
up on the cross. Okay, cool.
That's his enthronement.
Yeah. Yep. And then just the encouragement about in that the truth will set you free section. If you abide in my word, you are truly my disciple, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. I think that's just a good encouragement to stay diligent of being engaged with God's word.
Yeah, I mean, and just in his presence. It's this relationship. We're supposed to abide in him. You know, his word is scripture, but it's more than that. It's also who he is. Remember, he's the word. But I mean, they still think like, oh, but we're offspring of Abraham. This is my birthright. I'm not a slave, but that's not where we find freedom. It's only in Jesus.
In the tail end of this, in 8, where actually it is at the very end, where he says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am." And I know the whole "I am," that was the whole burning bush thing.
Mm-hmm.
You guys want to unpack that a little bit, or can I make that connection?
For it.
No, you go ahead.
You do. You do it. Draw straws. Maybe that should be a thing we do.
Well, and even
Then a segment.
Yeah, it's like rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Okay, you do. You go.
So all of this, you do this, but all of this has been, again, this Exodus.
Yeah.
We're supposed to have this in our head. And remember, he's already had 7 I am statements. We didn't talk about all of them, but he's
Yeah.
had 7. And this is his final, just I am.
Yeah.
Which he was saying, I am Yahweh.
Right.
Because in that story, when Moses talking to God, or God's talking to Moses, I am that I am, when he's like, oh,
Yeah. So the burning bush, the voice of the Lord speaks and says, I want you to go lead my people
Yeah.
out of Egypt, all that stuff. And he says, who should I say is sending me to do this? And he says, I am who I am.
yeah.
And that is the name Yahweh. That's translated anytime you read the Old Testament, and it's the word Lord with all capital letters. That's Yahweh. And here, Jesus is saying, that's who I am.
And this is why when we
mean,
talked, I don't know if
that is wild.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and this is why they immediately, it says, so they picked up stones to throw at him.
Yeah.
Because immediately that was
blasphemy.
that's blasphemy.
Yeah.
They were like,
I mean,
dude,
and
he
that's
just
not even
straight
like
up
what
just
anyone
said-
thought was going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they pieced it together later with Jesus' help.
Yeah.
But at this point, they were like, we thought we were looking for a king. And now you're saying you're the king, but you're also I am.
Right.
What
You
does
are
that mean?
Yahweh.
Yeah.
And so, like
Dude,
you're,
we know your mom, bro.
like you had said before, this is literally Jesus saying
Yes.
he is.
Yes. And this is after he's done all the things that Yahweh did for them
Yeah.
in Exodus. He's done all the same things, but he's saying, but this is eternal. This is new real life.
Yahweh
Yeah.
was the pillar of fire at night that led them. Yahweh was the cloud during the day. Yahweh provided the bread that fed them and the water of life that sprung forth from the rock and tamed the chaos
Freedom
waters.
from slavery.
All the things
Walk through
that
the
Yahweh
water.
did. He's
Yep.
saying, like, hey, I've been
Tabernacle
saying,
presence.
that's me.
Yeah.
Which,
This-
hang on,
this
we
is-
should, I don't want to interrupt. We should stop and acknowledge it is wild to believe this, in a sense. Like that this is, I think it could be easy for someone to listen to us describe Jesus as this person and our faith in him is something that is like easy. Faith in Jesus doesn't come without doubt, doesn't come without any of that. Like, we are believing that a human that walked 2,000 years ago is the God of the universe, that he created everything, and he is all that exists is what we need. We need him. He is the bread of our lives and the water for us to drink, and he is the thing that will give us new life, eternity now, already not yet. Like, we're believing in this, and our faith is founded there. And so, I don't know, there's a weightiness here, and we're having a good time talking about it,
But do you really believe that?
Yeah.
yeah.
And he's all of those things. And when you look at him and believe that and see what that looks like, it's the one who sits with the woman at the well, who is a sinner who no one else would share water with and speak to. It's the woman who's the adulterer. It's those who are blind. It's those who are lame. I mean, his compassion for the masses and for the outsider, which we've talked about a lot when we've read through the Gospels, but he's the beginning and the end. He's the I am. He's true and faithful, and he also is that loving and compassionate and personal and real.
Yeah, personal. That's what comes to mind for me in what you're talking about. Like, he's the God of the universe, did all those things, but he knows me. He has healed me. He has saved me. He has forgiven me. Like, he is personal. And so he cares about each one of us and is trying to make something new out of us together. So,
Yeah. That was like, I don't know, it's like a profound moment.
that's what the Gospel of John is meant to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why in chapter 20 he says, I've written these things so that you would believe.
Believe
Yeah.
and have life.
Yeah.
Believe and have life. I mean, I really do think we can sort of skip over that. I believe Jesus died. But this is the fullness of what we believe, the fullness of who Jesus is and what he's done for us and what he's offering us. He keeps saying over and over and over again, come, come, come.
Well, and the fullness of who Jesus is isn't just stuff that we read about in the New Testament. The fullness of Jesus isn't just a baby who was born, who lived a perfect life, died for us. It's like Jesus was from the beginning.
Yeah.
Through like all the stuff Acts. I'm sure what we'll read about in the next reading plan, but it's that's the fullness
And the
of-
revelation.
It's just and the revelation. Yeah,
The
complete-
lion who's the lamb who's returning, who
Yeah.
reigns.
all tatted up on his thigh
With a sword in
with a
his
sword
mouth.
in his mouth. Yeah.
Yep.
It's so much.
Yeah.
It's so much, and also, like Lance said, personal, real, practical, relevant.
I think 9, this story, I've always loved this story. I mean, reading it now, it's cool. It's again, this continuation of the storyline of bringing light, to healing by someone who is living literally in complete darkness and, gives them the ability to see. But just the practicality of, just a dude and everybody's like, oh, like, who is like, look, I told you, like, I don't care. Ultimately, when it boils down to it, I was blind. Now I see. I don't. Whatever you're saying about this guy, I
don't care.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even the parents, like, I don't know. He's an adult. Talk to him, and he's like, listen.
Well, they don't want trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was blind. Now I see. I don't know much of what you're trying to get at. Like, almost like I don't want to be a part of that. Clearly, like, you guys are on the wrong side of this. You don't get it.
You ever seen those videos on YouTube of the people who like colorblind and they put those glasses on?
Yes.
They can see color for
Oh
the
my
first time?
goodness.
It's emotional to watch someone have that overwhelming experience. Like, I didn't know all this existed.
Yeah.
And I think about that when I read this story. How much more his eyes are open and he's like, wait a minute.
Yeah. Because from birth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is
I was just talking
crazy.
to somebody about that actually, because in my systematic class, we were trying to comprehend what does new heavens and earth look like? What does it mean that there's no more fear or anxiety or sickness or pain? What does it mean? And I think that is a good analogy. It's going to be like putting on glasses, and we can't really imagine it. We know we long for it. We know it's real, but what is that like? I don't know. It's going to be that joyful though.
Yeah. And it's crazy, like you said, like crazy things to believe in. I mean, having like slamming a rock and having water come out, to me, literally, like have like someone who is blind that all of a sudden can now see. I mean, that just is. I mean, I'm not a science person. I don't know a lot of science, but I gotta imagine if you're blind, the way your brain is like developed and working, your optical nerves, all that stuff, when it's not being used for something, maybe it's doing something. Again, I'm not a scientist, but I would assume like it doesn't just, I mean, there's things actually have to happen for that to work. And in that moment, the miracle
It's real,
of
it's
that,
material.
like, yeah.
The power
Yeah.
displayed in
Yes.
this one small.
Yeah.
You just
It's
skip over-
crazy.
yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, so that's
Now,
my story.
we've talked a lot about how a lot of things are symbolic, but it doesn't mean they're not true. And I think this is one of those. It's symbolic of what the kingdom looks like. The blind will see. They'll see God. Will see truly who God is in Jesus. But also, we really will be healed. There will be
Yeah.
a physical transformation too.
So I don't know if you remember in the other Gospels, the disciples of John the Baptist go and ask Jesus, we've come to see, are you the one? John is asking. And he quotes Isaiah and Ezekiel, and he's like, the lame walk and the blind see. It's because that was happening. He's saying, I'm here and I'm the one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yes, you say he never claimed to be the Messiah. Every time he does something like that, he's claiming this is happening.
Yeah. Man.
Yep, that's another one of the signs. And then here's another I am statement. I am the good shepherd.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm still reading of the good side. I like a lot about that story, even at the end there. But okay, the good shepherd. This is a different picture of who he is as a good shepherd. Good shepherd who lays down his life for his sheep.
He's the lamb and the shepherd.
I think a lot of people find great comfort in chapter 10 because of the way it describes, or Jesus says that those the Father gives me, I hold on to them. No one can take them from my grip. That's just comforting to know that your rescue, your forgiveness, your salvation, your new life, all of that is in the hands of Jesus, not in your hands.
Yeah.
That's not to say that you are hands off. I'm just saying that we find our comfort in his power.
Yeah. I think just even to the recognition that there will be people who enter the sheepfold, but not by the door. They'll climb through and get in another way. The kind of the thief and the robber, that it's not, there are people in here, like be aware of the false prophets, teachers,
Oh yeah, much of the New Testament letters speak about that.
Yep. I don't know. Anything else you guys have in 10 here?
Well, I mean, even just we just read Revelation, and 10:10, he says, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came so they may have life and have it abundantly. Just the reminder that those are the two choices, that he says, take up your cross and follow me. And we've talked a lot about how that does involve sacrifice and persecution, following his way. But it leads to life, abundant life. He's offering us real, eternal, abundant life. And the alternative is theft and destruction and death. And that's all that Satan wants for us.
Yeah. I think the last thing I had was just this idea as I read this, and it made me think about a couple other verses that we had read earlier. In 16, he said, "And I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd." And I was just thinking, like, man, for the people who even believed that Jesus was who Moses was writing about, all that stuff, that probably had to feel so like, whoa, what does that mean? Like, no, you're going to be our king. This is us. And just, even back in, John 3:16, all, it's like this thing like, yeah, okay, maybe all of us.
Yeah.
Like they didn't really get, but even here it's even more explicit. Because I'm assuming what he's meaning there is the Gentiles, or is this another like, nope, Dad, you missed it. Is this right?
I don't know the answer to that, but that sounds
maybe?
right to me. I know that is true. And so that sounds right. I don't know the answer.
Okay. You're like, no. This is really referencing some other group of people that he's that are not of this fold.
Yeah, I agree with you. He also says, the sheep know my voice.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of this relational, personal aspect of believing in Jesus and following him is knowing him, abiding in him, knowing his voice, listening whenever he calls us to something. Again, it's not just something that happens, our faith, a one time in the past. It's this life in him and with him, listening to him and following him.
Yeah.
My cheat notes here on the iPad say, the other sheep that are not of this fold are Gentiles.
Oh.
Ted.
The phrase, one flock, one shepherd, alludes to Ezekiel 34 and 37. But here Jesus applies it more broadly as Jews and Gentiles will be united in one messianic community.
Yeah. And I'm just, again, that's what I thought. I guess mine doesn't say it like that. But it just extends to the rest of the world.
Just biblical fluency. I mean, we've seen that over and over and over and over and over in all of these letters and books, is that was the big question. And he's saying, I know this is surprising that I'm going to die and I'm your king, but also that it's not just for you. It's for everyone.
Anything else for the greater good? I think we're about it on time.
Yeah, I mean, later in 10, the middle of it, I mean, verse 31, the Jews picked up stones again to stone him because he is saying, I and the Father are one.
Yeah.
He's there to pick a fight, in a sense.
Or he's just trying to say, like, hey, guys, it's me. I'm here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and he says, think about even in Revelation how often it talked about holding to the testimony and the witness of Jesus. And there's a lot of that language here too. I mean, you feel like you're watching a courtroom a little bit. He talks a lot about witnesses.
Yeah.
He's proving who he is. And he's saying, I've done it over and over and over. The works that I do in my Father's name bear witness about me. He says that right after he says, my Father and I are one,
Nice. All right. Well, we only got a couple more of these podcasts, not many more chapters to go.
That's right. We need to celebrate. How are we going to celebrate the end of this thing?
I don't know. We're going to have to figure. Maybe we should take suggestions.
Takes Red Bulls for everybody.
No. I'm just kidding. Pass. All right. Well, thank you guys, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's Bible reading recap. We hope these conversations are helpful as we all seek Jesus in his word. Listen, if you go to clearcreekresources.org, we have a lot more resources dedicated to helping you study the Bible. Because when we open the Bible, God opens his mouth. Let's continue to seek God in Scripture together. We'll see you next week.